The maid sensually wipes the floor, but the bucket is filled with blood-stained water. Faced with her blatant seduction, I quickly flee. Just a few minutes ago, as a psychologist, I was counseling a patient. But after drinking the maid's specially prepared coffee, I suddenly felt dizzy. The patient's voice turned into a hypnotic chant. When I regained my senses, I found myself alone in the courtyard with my hands covered in blood. The patient was nowhere to be found. I rushed back into the house, only to find the maid kneeling on the floor, wiping up the blood while sensually swaying her hips. I wanted to know what I had done and where the patient had gone, but the maid didn't answer. Instead, she pressed herself up against me, teasing me.
Done playing this game! You're goddamn fired!
What the hell are you doing?
I tried to explain to my wife that the maid had been constantly teasing me, but to my surprise, the young and sexy maid appeared to be an old, conservatively dressed lady in my wife's eyes. On the second day after moving into our new house, an elderly woman dressed in butler attire suddenly appeared. She was the housekeeper of this old mansion, but in my eyes, the old housekeeper was a seductive beauty. My eyes uncontrollably fixated on her, and on her first day of work, she deliberately tempted me. I quickly suppressed my desires and left the room. The next day, while I was working from home, the housekeeper came to clean the room again, this time even unbuttoning her shirt. I struggled to control myself, but faced with such a seductive beauty, my willpower began to weaken. Just then, my daughter suddenly appeared and interrupted the moment. When I told my wife about the housekeeper's constant advances, she looked at me with an innocent expression. Anna didn't believe me, thinking I was just stressed and imagining things. We went to the hospital for a checkup. Soon after, I received a call from the doctor. After testing, the doctor found traces of narcotics in my blood. This drug causes severe memory loss and was banned decades ago. I immediately realized that every time I drank coffee prepared by the maid, I would experience a brief memory lapse. At that moment, my lover suddenly burst in, revealing that she was pregnant with my child. I told her to get an abortion and end our relationship, but she demanded that I take responsibility as a father. She even threatened to tell my wife and daughter. In order to hide my betrayal from my wife, I decided to take her to a restaurant to discuss things. But as soon as we stepped outside, a shovel struck her dead. I was frozen in shock and rushed to embrace her lifeless body. The man who had killed her told me not to call the police. He said he would help me solve this problem and dispose of the body for a fee of $1,000. To keep my affair a secret, I reluctantly agreed to let him bury the body in the yard. Later, I built a gazebo over the spot to erase all traces of my lover. I thought I had finally rid myself of her entanglement, but little did I know, she had become a vengeful ghost forever trapped in this house. Meanwhile, the maid watched this scene and couldn't help but cry because beneath the deep pit, her own body was buried. Over 30 years ago, she was violated by the master of the house and the mistress under the mistaken belief that the maid had seduced her husband, killed both of them. From that moment on, the maid's soul was trapped here, enduring decades of torment. Although the mistress moved to the house next door, she still maintained a connection to this cursed mansion. Ever since we bought this house cheaply, strange events have occurred. My wife and I decided to sell it and move into a new one. However, the real estate agent suggested that we hire 2 designers to redecorate the house to make it more appealing. On Halloween, the designers arrived. They advised that in order to sell the house quickly, we should demolish the gazebo in the yard. Hearing this, I was startled, as the gazebo was where I buried my lover. That night, I dressed as a vampire to entertain my wife, but Anna remained cold and distant, questioning my lover Hayden. It turns out Anna had checked the phone records and discovered that Hayden had called me over 20 times. I quickly explained that although Hayden had been relentlessly pursuing me, I had never answered her calls. I promised her that Hayden would never appear again, as she was already dead. However, just then the phone rang, and the caller ID showed it was none other than the deceased Hayden. Anna's emotions completely erupted.
I'll call her back.
She stormed downstairs, and I rushed to calm her down. At that moment, she suddenly felt intense pain in her abdomen.
Ah!
What is it?
Ah! It feels like the baby's kicking.
That's impossible. It's only 8 weeks old.
Ah!
Okay.
Ah! I gotta go to the hospital. What's going on? Ah!
Stay here and don't answer the door.
Don't answer the door. It's Halloween.
We quickly went to the hospital where the doctor's examination revealed that Anna's baby was much larger than other babies at the same stage. To my shock, the doctor seemed to have seen something terrifying and fainted in fear.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Just then, I received another call. My daughter had heard knocking at the door, and it was the man who had helped me bury the body. He was angry because I hadn't paid him the $1,000 and demanded that I come outside. Panic set in, while I was concerned about my daughter's safety. I didn't want to expose my involvement in my lover's death. So, I told my daughter not to call the police and promised that we would be home soon. We returned home, but to our horror, we couldn't find our daughter anywhere. Just then, the knocking at the door resumed. I thought it was my daughter returning, but when I opened the door, it was my dead lover, Hayden's body.